My name is Maya Reed. I've been running for 91 days, and I still don't know what I'm running from. I could tell you it's a man, or a broken relationship, or maybe the weight of my past clawing up my spine. But the truth is, I don't really know anymore. I just know I couldn't breathe in that apartment, couldn't sleep in that bed, couldn't smile at people and pretend I wasn't drowning. So I left. I stuffed everything into the back of my car, some clothes, a sketchbook I haven't opened in months, a pack of gum I've chewed into dust, and I drove. I didn't have a destination, just a direction, away. Now I'm here, at the edge of nowhere, on my Aunt Liv's horse ranch, where time seems to move slower, and the wind doesn't carry screams. I came here because I thought no one would look, for me, because I thought I could disappear. And for a while it worked, until he found me. But I'll get to that. The air here smells different, like hay, dust, and old rain, the kind of scent that wraps around your bones and tells you to slow down, to listen. But I didn't come here to listen. I came here to be silent, invisible. Maya, honey, you sure you're okay in the cabin alone? Aunt Liv's voice was always gentle, like someone trying not to scare a wounded animal. She knew better than to push me. Yeah, it's perfect, I lied. The truth? The silence in that cabin was almost too loud. Every creak in the wood sounded like a memory I didn't want to revisit. But I needed space. No roommates, no texts, no expectations. Just the sound of wind through trees, and the occasional snort from a horse in the distance. I hadn't really met the horses yet. Not properly. I avoided the stables like they might see through me. Liv told me their names, Ranger, Hazel, Comet. But she mentioned one I hadn't seen. Ash. He's quiet. Keeps to himself, watchful. You'd like him, she'd said, sipping her tea and watching me too closely. I brushed her off. I didn't come here to make friends, not even four-legged ones. That first week, I only left the cabin at dawn or dusk. I took long walks into the forest, down gravel roads, past the fences. I thought if I walked far enough, the ache in my chest might fall out of me. One evening, just as the sky bruised purple, I sat behind the barn, hidden by a stack of old hay bales. I didn't want anyone to see me cry. Not Liv, not the ranch hands, not even the sky. But someone did see me. I heard a soft exhale, warm, close, real. I turned my head slowly and froze. There he was, a dapple gray giant with dark eyes that didn't blink. His coat looked like storm clouds. His mane hung thick like tangled threads of smoke. And he looked at me, not like a horse, not like a curious animal. He looked like he knew something. I swallowed the sob in my throat and wiped my face roughly. Go away, I whispered, not unkindly. I'm not good company. But Ash didn't move. He just stood there, watching. Minutes passed, maybe hours. The sky went dark. The cicadas started their song. And still, he didn't leave. Eventually I did. The next day, he was there again. Different place. Same watchful eyes. I was by the pond that time, sketching wildflowers with a pencil I hadn't used in weeks. I'd barely started when I felt that strange warmth again, that feeling of being seen. I looked up. Ash, standing just beyond the tree line. Still, unblinking. Seriously? I muttered. I stood, brushed off my jeans, and walked the other way. I didn't want to get attached. I didn't want anything attaching itself to me. But the thing about presence is, it wears you down. Quietly, like water on stone. By the 5th time, I didn't flinch when he showed up. By the 6th, I started talking to him. Not about anything important. Not at first. Just casual things. The way the sky turned orange behind the hills. The smell of fresh oats. Whether I should cut my hair or not. He never responded. Not in the way humans do. But there was something about his eyes. Something steady. Non-judgmental. One night, I sat outside the cabin steps with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. I hadn't meant to cry. I'd fought it all day. But grief is sneaky like that. It waits until you're alone. I don't even know what's wrong with me. I choked out to the dark. A soft snort answered me. I lifted my head. Ash, standing just past the fence. I told you not to follow me, I said, smiling bitterly through tears. He didn't move. He didn't need to. Because somehow, even without coming closer, he had found me. Not just where I was, but who I was under all the hiding. I don't know what drew him to me. Maybe it was pity. Maybe curiosity. Or maybe animals just sense what humans don't want to admit, that we're loneliest when we try hardest not to be. I began to look for him, subtly at first. I'd take the long path to the well, just in case he was by the edge. I'd linger by the fences at sunset, wondering if he'd appear again. He always did. Ash didn't nuzzle or beg for treats. He wasn't playful like the other horses. He was just there. And somehow, that was enough. Liv noticed. You two have a rhythm, she said one morning, watching from the porch as Ash trailed behind me at a distance. He doesn't do that with anyone else, not even me. I shrugged. Maybe he's just weird, she laughed. Or maybe he sees something in you that you don't. I didn't respond. How could I? I didn't even see myself anymore. One afternoon, thunder rolled in fast, unexpected and angry. I was near the woods when the sky split open and the rain came in sheets. I ran for shelter, heart pounding, hair plastered to my face. I ducked into an old equipment shed near the paddock. My hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the noise. Thunder always made me feel like I was a child again, waiting for the storm inside to match the one outside. I curled into a corner and hugged my knees. Maya, I whispered to myself, get it together. Then, thud, a sound outside, slow, heavy, thud. I held my breath. A dark head peeked through the half-open door. Rain glistened on his mane like silver threads. Those same deep eyes locked on mine. Ash. You found me, I whispered, not even surprised. He stepped inside, just enough to be near, not enough to crowd me. The rain roared around us, but in that tiny moment, soaking wet and shivering, I felt still. It was the first time in months that I didn't feel completely alone. I came here to disappear, but now I'm not so sure I want to. Because somehow, Ash keeps finding the pieces. I thought I buried too deep, and maybe, just maybe, he's not here to follow me. Maybe he's here to lead me home. I never meant for him to matter. Ash was supposed to be just another shadow on this ranch, just a quiet creature in the backdrop of my hiding place. But somehow he kept slipping through the cracks in my silence, uninvited, patient, and unrelenting. And the worst part? I started waiting for him. I wouldn't admit it, not even to myself, but I found myself glancing over my shoulder more and more, listening for hooves in the dirt, pausing mid-thought to scan the horizon. My mornings began with a quick look toward the paddock. My nights ended wondering where he had gone. He was never far. The morning after the thunderstorm, I awoke to sunlight, filtering through the cracks in the cabin wall. My clothes were still damp from the day before, draped awkwardly over a wooden chair. My body ached. My mind, even more so. I hadn't slept like that in weeks. Deep, dreamless. Still, Ash hadn't. Stayed in the shed with me, After the rain eased, he'd quietly stepped back into the storm, like a ghost returning to the wind. But his presence lingered like an imprint, like something left behind in the space between heartbeats. I sat up slowly, blanket tangled around my legs, and exhaled. "You're losing it, Maya," I muttered, rubbing sleep from my eyes. "You're getting attached to a horse. But wasn't that safer than getting attached to a person?" I avoided the main house that day. Liv would see it on my face, whatever it was I was feeling. She always did. So instead, I wandered through the back trails of the ranch, pretending I didn't care whether or not Ash followed me. He didn't show. By midday, I was annoyed. Not worried, annoyed. Because this had become our routine, hadn't it? I disappear. He finds me. He watches. I pretend not to care. And somehow, I felt less alone. Now he was gone. I circled back to the paddock, standing at the edge with hands in my jacket pockets. The sun glinted off the grass, and flies buzzed lazily in the warm air. I saw Ranger tossing his head at Hazel. Comet nibbled the fence post, no sign of him. My chest felt too tight. "Looking for someone?" Liv's voice startled me. She stood behind me, arms crossed, straw hat tilted slightly. I blinked. "No," she smiled without smiling. "He's in the north pasture today. I had Jonah move him this morning for some grazing time alone." I looked away, masking my reaction. Doesn't matter. But it did. And she knew it. "You could go see him, you know," she said gently. "Take a brush. He's been shedding like crazy." I hesitated. "He doesn't like being touched." "Not true," she said. "He just doesn't like being rushed." Didn't answer. Instead, I turned back to the pasture and watched the other horses in their quiet rhythm. But I couldn't shake the ache in my chest. It took me 2 more hours to finally walk to the north field. I kept telling myself it was just a walk, just some fresh air, not a visit, not looking for him. But the truth burned behind my ribs. I missed him. He was near the far edge of the pasture, standing under a crooked elm tree, swishing his tail and occasionally stamping a hoof at invisible flies. He looked bigger in the open space, wilder, untouchable. I approached slowly, steps soft in the grass. "Ash," I said, unsure of what I expected. His ears twitched, his head turned. He saw me, but didn't move. I swallowed hard. "You're late," I added, attempting a smile. Still, he didn't come. He just watched. I stopped a few feet away, heart thudding. "I didn't want to be seen today," I whispered. The wind tugged at my hair, and then he stepped toward me. 1 step, 2, 3. He paused within reach, lowered his head slightly, and exhaled. Warm breath, earthy scent. The air around us felt like it had thickened, like we'd entered some invisible space where the world slowed down. Tentatively, I raised my hand. He didn't flinch. I laid my palm gently against the side of his neck. His coat was warm beneath my fingers, sun-soaked and alive. I let my hand rest there, feeling his heartbeat against mine. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel the need to run. I spent the afternoon brushing him. At first he fidgeted, not pulling away, just shifting like someone, uncomfortable with unfamiliar kindness. I knew the feeling too well. "Same, Ash," I said quietly. "I don't know how to accept this either." The brush pulled tufts of hair from his coat. It fell in soft gray clumps onto the grass like pieces of storm cloud being released. I worked slowly, gently, talking as I moved, not about anything important. Just sounds. Just presence. He stood still the entire time, and when I finally stepped away, he turned his head and nudged my shoulder once. just once, then returned to stillness. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't feel like I had to. There was something about the weight of his head against my shoulder, the sound of his breath, the steadiness of his body, that reminded me I was here, that I hadn't vanished completely. I started sleeping with the window open after that, just in case. Days passed. Ash began showing up without being called, outside the cabin, at the pond, near the hill where the sun fell slow and red. He never demanded anything, never pushed. He was just there, a shadow that brought light instead of darkness. But the more I opened up to him, the more I felt the world pressing in. Because healing doesn't come quietly. It brings memories, sounds, scars. And one evening, it brought a letter. I found it on the porch, wrapped in a blue envelope. No return address, just my name. Inside, 3 short sentences. Maya, you can't hide forever. Come home. D. The paper trembled in my hand. My legs went cold. My stomach dropped. Hadn't spoken to him in 3 months. I'd blocked his number. I'd changed mine. How did he even know where I was? The storm came back into my chest. I sat on the edge of my bed that night, letter clenched in one hand, the other covering my mouth as if to trap the scream rising. Inside, I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to be found. And yet, just before midnight, I heard hooves. Slow, deliberate. I stepped outside, breath shaky. Ash stood a few feet away. He didn't come closer. He just watched. I felt the tears coming, the fear, the panic. But I also felt the stillness he brought. I walked to him. He didn't move as I pressed my forehead against his neck. He didn't step away as I cried into his coat. He didn't judge me when I whispered, I can't go back. I won't. He just stood, strong, unmoving. And I realized something. I had tried to hide from the world, from my past, from myself. But Ash, he had seen me, not the surface me, not the polite smile or the running girl. He'd found the parts I'd buried, the ones that still hurt, the ones that were still real, and he stayed. Even when I didn't want to be seen, he stayed. You'd think trust would come with a moment, a lightning strike of realization, a grand gesture, a breakthrough. But with Ash, it was different. Trust came quietly. It came in the pause between heartbeats, in the space between steps, in the time between when I looked away. And he was still there when I looked back. That morning, after the letter, I didn't go to breakfast. I didn't wander the ranch. I didn't even open the curtains. I just sat on the floor of the cabin, cross-legged, staring at the folded note on the table like it might explode. The handwriting felt like a ghost. I kept rereading the 3 lines, over and over, as if repetition might somehow reveal a hidden meaning. But it didn't. You can't hide forever. Come home. De-home. What a cruel word. By late afternoon, the air had turned heavy. Clouds smothered the hills like they were trying to press the world flat. I hadn't seen Ash all day. Not that I'd looked for him. Not really. But I missed him, which was ridiculous. He was just a horse, a creature of habit, a coincidence. And yet, in his presence, I'd felt something I hadn't felt in months. Safe. Now, with the letter sitting like a weight on my chest, I felt anything but. So I did something I hadn't done since I arrived. I walked into the barn. The scent hit me first. Sweet hay, warm leather, and something unmistakably alive. The air felt dense with breath and time. Horses shifted in their stalls, some glancing over their gates, some uninterested. But Ash wasn't there. I checked the side pasture, the trees, the ridge. Nothing. The emptiness hollowed out my stomach. Liv found me later, sitting on the fence near the south meadow, arms wrapped around my knees like I was trying to hold myself together. "He's waiting," she said gently. I looked up. "Who?" She tilted her head. "Ash. You've been gone all day." I blinked. "Gone? I haven't." "You haven't shown up," she corrected, and he noticed. I didn't know how to respond to that. It sounded too much like hope, and I'd trained myself to flinch from hope. Still, I stood. "Where is he?" Liv nodded toward the forest trail. "Same place he goes when he's unsure. He waits near the old quarry. Hasn't moved since this morning. Since the letter." The path to the quarry was overgrown in places, wild with late spring weeds and tangled vines. I hadn't been there since childhood. I remembered it as a place of echoes, a quiet bowl of stone and silence. Sure enough, when I reached the rim, he was there. Ash stood motionless near the edge, one hoof cocked, ears forward. He didn't look at me when I approached. He didn't have to. He knew I was there. I hesitated at the top, heart tight. The wind stirred my hair. The sky was bruising with oncoming rain. Still, he waited, and waited, and waited. I descended the slope, breath shallow. My boots crunched softly on gravel. My hand trembled as I reached out, not to touch, just to exist in his orbit again. "I got a letter," I said aloud. He didn't react. I don't want to open that door again. I don't want to explain myself, or go back, or pretend I'm okay. Ash shifted slightly, head turning just enough that his gaze met mine. His eyes were quiet storms, not pitying, not soft, just present. I sat on the cool ground beside him. He lowered his head near my shoulder, not quite touching, but close enough to feel. "I used to think I was strong," I whispered. "But I was just good at hiding the breaks, like painting over cracks in the wall and calling it renovation." The wind picked up. Ash blinked slowly. I ran from someone who told me I was too much, too emotional, too complicated, too everything, and I believed him. The pain in my throat swelled. "But you..." I turned my head toward him. "You never looked away, even when I tried to disappear." A soft snort. I reached out, and this time I didn't hesitate. My fingers brushed the edge of his cheek, trailing down to his warm muzzle. He didn't move, didn't flinch, just waited. And in that stillness, I found a space I hadn't felt in months. Permission. Permission to feel, to speak, to be. We stayed like that until the sky broke open again. The rain came without warning, fast, cold, unapologetic. I scrambled to my feet, heart racing. "Come on, Ash!" But he didn't move. He simply turned, slowly, and walked toward the trees, trusting I'd follow. I did. The shed was barely big enough for both of us, but he stepped inside without complaint. I ducked under the low beam, soaked and shivering. Water dripped steadily from the corners of the roof. I sank to the ground, back against the wall, breathing hard. Ash stood guard near the entrance, blocking most of the wind, his body a silent barrier against the storm. Thunder cracked. I flinched. He didn't, and I realized something then. Something I hadn't wanted to name. Ash wasn't following me. He wasn't just appearing at random or out of instinct. He was waiting. For me. Later, when the storm passed and the sun slipped, beneath the horizon, I didn't return to the cabin right away. I stayed beside him, brushing mud from his coat with my sleeve. fingers tracing lines in his mane like they were maps I could read. "Do you think I can start over?" I asked. He didn't answer, of course. But he didn't walk away either, and that felt like a yes. That night, I stood by the fire with the letter in my hand. Its edges were slightly worn now, smudged from being folded, touched, carried. I didn't burn it. But I didn't open it again either. Instead, I slipped it into the drawer beneath my bed, shut it softly, and whispered, "Not today." Then I opened the window. Outside, in the pale light of the moon, I saw him. Ash. Standing at the edge of the clearing. Still. Quiet. Waiting. I had already packed when the sun came up. A duffel bag stuffed with 2 shirts, a sweater, worn jeans, and that old sketchbook I still hadn't touched. My boots sat by the door, laces tied like I didn't want to give myself time to reconsider. The cabin was quiet, eerily so. No creaking floorboards, no wind whistling through the cracks, no hooves outside the window. He wasn't there this morning, and somehow that made it easier. Or so I told myself. The decision came in the middle of the night, sudden and sharp, like a blade in the dark. I woke gasping, heart thudding, cold sweat on my skin. In the dream, I'd been back in that apartment. The city pressed against the windows, and Dee's voice rang through every wall. "Why are you so hard to love, Maya? Why can't you just be normal?" I reached for air. There was none, and just like that, I knew. I couldn't stay here, pretending peace was enough. Pretending I could build something real with silence and shadows. This was a dream I didn't deserve. And worse, it was a dream that didn't belong to me. So I wrote a note to Liv. 3 lines. No return address. "Thank you. I needed this. But it's time I faced it." The morning fog was thick when I zipped my bag and stepped out onto the porch. Everything looked washed in silver, soft, faded, like the world was still deciding whether or not to wake up. I walked with purpose. That's what you do when you're scared. You make your steps loud enough to fool your heartbeat. Liv wasn't up yet. The house lights were off. The ranch hands hadn't started feeding. Even the birds were quiet. Good. I crossed the pasture path, head down, heart thundering. But I should have known better. He was waiting by the gate. Ash, standing still, ears forward, eyes locked on me like he'd been expecting this moment all along. Stopped in my tracks. My throat closed. "No," I said softly. "Not today." He didn't move. I took another step. He stepped sideways, deliberately, blocking the gate with the bulk of his body. Ash. Still no movement. I dropped the bag to the ground. "You have to let me go." He stared, not angry, not afraid. Just there. Unmoving. Unyielding. My chest tightened. I'm not strong enough to stay," I whispered. "I can't keep pretending this place is mine, that I belong here. I was never meant to be seen. You don't understand. If I let myself believe I deserve this, and I lose it," my voice cracked, "I'll break." Ash exhaled, a long, low sound, like the wind leaving the earth. Then he did something I didn't expect. He took one step forward, and another, and stopped directly in front of me. His nose nearly touched my chest, and then, gently, insistently, he nudged me back. Not rough. Not forceful. Just a quiet, steady push. I stumbled slightly, stunned. He nudged again, and again, until I was 3 steps away from the gate, and the bag lying beside it. My breath came in shallow gasps. Tears burned behind my eyes. He was telling me something, without words, without sound. He was saying no. No, you don't get to run this time. No, you don't get to vanish. No, you don't get to hide behind goodbyes. I fell to my knees. The cold dew soaked through my jeans. But I didn't care. I buried my face in my hands and let the tears come. Hot, harsh, ugly. Because for the first time in months, someone wasn't letting me slip away. And it wasn't a person. It wasn't a therapist or a friend or a partner. It was him. This silent gray storm of a horse who had found me in every shadow, waited beside me through every silence, and now refused to let me leave when I needed to be found most. Minutes passed, maybe more. I finally lifted my head. Ash stood exactly where I'd left him, still, calm, like the gate was his to guard, and I was something worth keeping. I rose slowly to my feet, walked to the bag, picked it up, and turned around. Not toward the road, not toward the car, but toward the barn. Liv was already there when I arrived. She looked up from a feed bucket, surprise flickering in her eyes. Then, without a word, she glanced at the duffel bag in my hand, then past me, to the pasture, to Ash. Her smile was quiet, knowing, almost proud. "He stopped you," she said softly. I nodded. I was halfway gone. He knew. That day, I stayed in the barn. Not because I had to. Because I needed to. I brushed every horse. Talked to Hazel. Fed Comet. Watched Ranger be his usual grumpy self. I mucked stalls. Cleaned tack. Stacked hay. Things I never thought I'd willingly do, and every time I looked up, Ash was watching. Not pressing, just present. Later, I found a folded towel on my bed with a note from Liv. "You don't have to explain. Just stay." That evening, after the sun dipped below the hills and the air turned soft with dusk, I walked to Ash's paddock. He met me halfway. I pressed my forehead to his neck, arms loose around his withers. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Because, for the first time since I ran, I didn't feel like I was hiding anymore. That night the wind picked up. Rain whispered against the roof. I lay in bed, not asleep, not restless, just awake in the fullest sense of the word. And then I heard it. A soft thud outside the cabin. I rose, wrapped in a blanket, and opened the door. There he was, Ash, standing just beyond the porch, head low, eyes reflecting starlight. He had followed me again. No, he had found me. Because that's what he did. That's what he always did, even when I tried to leave. Even when I tried to hide. I used to think silence was safety. That if I stayed quiet enough, still, enough, no one would notice the parts of me that were broken. That if I kept moving, no one could ever get close enough to see what I'd buried beneath all the noise. But I was wrong, because he saw me, even when I didn't want to be seen, even when I folded into myself and tried to disappear. Ash found me. Over and over again. And now, someone else had too. The second letter arrived 5 days after the first. No name, just my name in familiar handwriting. This time shakier, smaller. I found it wedged under the cabin door in the early morning, soaked slightly with dew. My hands shook before I even opened it. "Maya, I know I messed everything up. I shouldn't have sent that first note. I was angry. I was afraid. But I saw your name on Liv's website. I knew where you'd gone. I don't want to fight, I want to understand. Please let me see you. One more time. I'll come to the ranch. Tomorrow. Tomorrow." The word exploded behind my eyes like a flare in the night. The rest of the day passed in pieces. I tried mucking stalls. My hands fumbled. I tried feeding Hazel, dropped the oats. I tried walking to the pond, but turned back halfway. My mind spun. I thought I'd escaped him, that whatever hold he had on me was gone. But now his presence, just the idea of it, was seeping back under my skin like oil, and I hated how part of me still listened for his voice in the wind. By sundown, I was shaking. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor of the cabin, back against the bed frame, heart beating like a trapped bird in my chest. I should leave, run, hide, but I didn't. Because this time, something had changed. Before dawn, I walked to the paddock. Ash was waiting. He always was. He stood at the far fence line, eyes on me before I even stepped through the gate. His coat shimmered in the first gray light of morning. The fog around his hooves made him look like he was part of the land itself, something ancient and unmovable. I walked to him slowly. My legs were trembling. "Ash," I whispered. "He's coming." He blinked, slow and steady. I don't know what I'll say or do. I just know I'm scared. Not of him. Not really. I'm scared of me, of what I'll feel when I see him again, what I might forget. Ash stepped closer. I reached up, laid a hand on his warm neck, and leaned into him. He didn't move, didn't breathe hard, just stood there, solid and real and mine in a way nothing else in my life had ever been. I felt the storm inside me slow. Not stop, but slow. Noon came too quickly. Liv stayed in the barn, giving me space. I sat on the porch, feet swinging off the edge, fists clenched in my lap. The sound of tires on gravel shattered the stillness. A dark car, dust swirling behind it. It pulled, up slowly, then stopped. He stepped out. His hair was shorter. His shoulders looked heavier. Same eyes, though. Same way of scanning everything. Everyone. Like he was deciding how to control the moment. He saw me. Gave a small smile. "Maya," he said. I stood, knees locked. He came closer, careful, like I was something wild that might bolt. "I'm not here to fight," he said. "I just want to talk." "I don't," I replied flatly. He blinked. I swallowed hard. "You can say what you need to, but I don't owe you anything." His jaw tightened. "I know, but I wanted to say I'm sorry." The words fell between us like pebbles in a river. Small, sharp, vanishing into silence. "I didn't know how to be with someone like you," he continued. "You were deep, real, too much for someone like me." I stayed quiet. "Everything you gave me, your love, your trust, I didn't know what to do with it. So I pushed it away. Pushed you away." I stared past him, toward the pasture. And there he was. Ash, standing still at the top of the hill, watching. Dee turned to look. "That your horse?" "No," I said quietly. "He's not mine, but he found me." Dee gave a puzzled look, but I didn't explain. Instead, I stepped off the porch and walked past him, toward the gate, toward Ash. Dee didn't follow. He watched. I reached the fence. Ash stepped forward immediately. I pressed my hand to his cheek. He leaned into it. "I'm not going with him," I whispered. "I'm not going back." My eyes burned. I finally found something that didn't need me to change. Ash nickered, softly, brushing his head against my arm. Dee was still by the car, waiting. I turned, took one step toward him, and stopped. "No more letters," I said. "No more visits." He nodded slowly. Understood. He got in the car. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't need to. The engine started. The dust kicked up again. And then, he was gone. I stood at the fence for a long time. Ash stayed beside me. We didn't move. The wind shifted. The ranch came alive again. Birds calling, grass stirring, horses whinnying in the distance. And I realized something so obvious it almost hurt. I had never really been hiding, not from the world. Not even from Dee. I'd been hiding from myself. From the part of me that believed I could be loved without bending, seen without shrinking, held without vanishing. Ash saw her first. He never demanded, never judged. He just stood there, waiting for me to show up. And now I had, fully, finally. That evening, Liv found me brushing Ash under the elm tree in the north pasture. She leaned on the fence post, arms folded, smiling. "He didn't come looking for you. You know," she said. I looked up. "Who?" "Dee," she replied. "Ash." I blinked. "He wasn't following you. He was waiting. All along. Since the first day. I saw it." I smiled softly. So did I. That night I opened the drawer, took out both letters, walked to the fire pit by the barn, lit a single match, watched the paper curl, blacken, vanish. Ash stood nearby, his silhouette tall against the stars. And I knew, without words, without doubt, I wasn't running anymore. I had been found.